Welcome to the Emotional Leads Podcast. I'm Kim, your host. If you're new, I am really happy to have you here. And this episode is a great one to jump in on because I'm going to get really personal. I'm going to share about my emotional eating journey, and I'm going to also share how I have worked my way into a space where I don't overeat, emotionally eat, or binge eat as much as I used to, and the awareness that I have now that helps me have really successful days. I want to have that for you. And if you've been with me, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you, by the way, for those of you who are writing in and telling me what you think of these episodes and how they resonate with you. That's really special to me. That means a lot to me because I want you to get something out of this. This is for you. And I want you to feel good about you, your body, your health, and the decisions that you're making every day to have a long, wonderful life. The interesting thing about today's episode is I'm going to be sharing some things that some of you might have heard already personally, but I'm going to be adding in some deeper things that have happened throughout my childhood, good and bad, that I think contribute to the way that I used food to cope. And if you use food to cope, you will understand this. And I say good or bad, but when I say good or bad, I don't mean that there's anybody that did anything good or bad in my world. It's just what it was and how my perception of it is and was, and how I'm using that, though, to take the triggers that I have from my younger self and create Kim today, who can be more loving, compassionate, give myself grace, but also make the changes that I want to make. Because we can't make changes when we have a lot of limiting beliefs from our past. Those limiting beliefs can really drag you down and hold you back. And also, I'd love for you to go back 2 episodes before this, episode 89. My really good friend Laura Heflin and I really chat about another part of this is that will tie in beautifully is perfectionism is the enemy of consistency. So when you're trying to change your mindset, rewire your brain, and change your habits, if you are trying to be a perfectionist at the same time, which might be from your upbringing, then it's really challenging to move forward because you will always feel like you're not doing enough, and then you'll quit and you won't move forward and you'll just think it's you, and it's not you. Sweet lady, it is not you. It is really the wiring in your brain, and we can actually change this. It takes practice. It takes time. It's taken me years. But if I can give you some tips today, I want to give you 6 tips in addition to my background so you can start seeing if this resonates with you. If I can help you do this faster by giving it to you, then you won't have to go through all the things that I went through to learn it. So those of you who are new, I'm a nutritional health coach. I have certifications in health coaching, food addiction coaching, and the other certification that I have that is really special that works so well with my clients to release a lot of tension and stress is EFT tapping. And that also really helps release those limiting beliefs. And if you're ever interested in trying it, I hope you'll reach out. This episode is one of those episodes that you might want to share with a friend if you've been having some of the conversations that I'm going to be sharing with you today. I am literally pretending you're standing here in front of me or sitting in front of me. You're having a cup of tea, and we're just having a conversation. I'm sharing some things from my past. Because if you've gone through any of the things that I've gone through, even if it's only 1 or 2 of the 10 or 20 that I might share with you today, and you resonate with it, it might actually have something to do with why you use food to cope. So are you using food to cope? Are you feeling like you are emotionally eating because something's going on? You're feeling stressed, you're feeling sad, you feel upset, you feel resentful. Are you overeating at your meals or overeating when you go to snack? Do you even feel like it's binge behavior? Whatever's happening to you, I want to share some things with you so you can stop it. And this is what I share with my clients. But first, I want to give you the personal background. So if any of this resonates with you, I'd love to hear from you because this background, everyone's different, but there might be some things that you felt growing up, and now you're going to know, like, hey, what's this connection to what I'm doing right now with food? And it's so important. So the first thing I want to share with you is I grew up in a military family. My dad was a Marine, and we moved every couple years. I was always the new kid, and I was always the shy, geeky new kid. And I was born in Quantico, Virginia. We lived a couple different places. The ones that I really remember are spending time in Minnesota, and I was in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And when I was in Green Bay, I was in elementary school. And I remember some very vivid moments, even in elementary school, feeling like I loved my friends. I remember that was the last time that I really remember being a blissful kid, having fun, really just enjoying being outside all the time. There was snow, building snowmen. In the summer, we had a weeping willow in the backyard, and we had a little stream back there, and we had woods. And that was the last time I remember feeling super comfortable. It was really sad, but I don't think I fully got it when my parents said, okay, we have to move. Dad has a new job. And we moved from there to Phoenix, Arizona. And I did a little bit of elementary school, and I started seventh grade in Phoenix. Phoenix was fun because I was outside all year round. I will tell you, I've always wished that I was like the sporty type. So I tried softball, and it was really embarrassing. I also have had to wear glasses since I was 5 years old. And in the 70s, folks, glasses were not cool like they are now. And mine were big like they are now. That's the style, right? But back then, big plastic glasses that people made fun of me because not a lot of kids wore them. But I had terrible eyesight, and it really affected school. And I was always that good kid that always got great grades, did the homework. And when I wasn't doing well in kindergarten, they figured out that was because I couldn't see anything, couldn't see the board. So we moved to Phoenix, and little things stand out in Phoenix that are like the falling on the softball field and my glasses falling off. That was the first time where I was in a group of girls, and when you have 3 girls in a group, one always gets left out, and that was me sometimes. It wasn't always me, but when it was me, it felt like it was always me. I remember also silly things. And I want you to look back to when you were in elementary school. If anybody said something to you and you still remember it and it kind of has a little pang to it. My mom used to sew, and she sewed. She was amazing. She would sew all these things. And back in the 70s, halter tops were in. And I remember this kid that I really liked. I was skateboarding by him. Yes, I was skateboarding on this little plastic skateboard. And I tripped over a rock. It was one of those that just stopped on a rock. I flew off of it. And he's like, oh, look, bra lady fell down. And so he called my halter top a bra. And I remember those things stuck with me. And I was so shy and embarrassed. And I really loved to read. I remember my uncle telling me once, you were always in the corner reading. But reading was very safe. And my brother was born. And there was this feeling as the years went on that I was the eldest, I was the girl, I was the good girl. I did what I was told. I got good grades. I did my homework. I did all the things. And unfortunately, that set me up for lifelong perfectionism and also being afraid of disappointing people. And if any of you have been in that position, even if you weren't the firstborn, but if you were that person in your family, the good girl, you know that those expectations never go away, and you feel like you're really disappointing people, and they may actually react that way if you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And I remember feeling I started in band there, and that was actually a saving grace because it really was a group, because I always wished that I had done sports and had that family, but I got that in the band. But of course we had to move again. So in 7th grade, the end of 7th grade, I moved to Fairfield, Connecticut. And I was so blessed. I felt like such an outsider, but I was linked up with still my best friend, Loretta. And Loretta and I were in band together. We both played flute. And I actually had somebody who was just like me, who I could talk to, who thought the same way. We were going through a lot of the same things. We had different body types, which is ironic because we talk about it. We're very similar right now, but I had always wanted what she had. And I think she always wanted what I had. It's just kind of a funny thing of the things that we think when we're younger. But junior high was really tough. I again never felt like I fit in. And when we moved to high school, I still felt very shy. The band again saved me, just being a part of something. But I still had this longing when I saw all these kids who hung out with their sports teams. And I always felt like there was something to that popularity. We all wished we were popular. Now we can look back. I'm 58 years old. Now I really don't want to be out in the middle of things. But, when you're younger, you don't realize that you are looking for something because you're missing something. You're looking for that popularity or being a part of that group because you are missing something. And I often wonder if part of me feeling the way I did in those less than feelings, my self-worth feeling low, self-esteem low, had a lot to do with maybe the moving all the time because everybody had friends and they were all in cliques already before I ever got to anybody's school, or they'd gone to school with each other since they were in kindergarten. So that was really interesting. High school is where I really remember. There were times before this that I could look back where I would sneak into my mom's food and really get into the chocolate chips or the country time lemonade. I've told this story before. I would lick my finger and stick it in the tub of the powdered lemonade just to get that sugar high. Those are times that I do remember that sugar clearly created that amazing dopamine hit. But in high school, I would order cookies and drink milk, which I crack up at now. But I would eat the grandma's cookies. That was the brand. And there were 3 in a pack, and that's what I'd have for lunch. And I think that's where I really started soothing with food. And I was in a dance program. So again, I wasn't in sports, but I was a part of a group, and that was a really neat group. So my first boyfriend was the lead in The Sound of Music. And that was a really interesting thing, too, because he was older. So I always felt weird being with his friends because I didn't have the kind of freedom that they had. My parents weren't necessarily going to let me go hang out with someone 2 years older. And I wasn't even driving at that point. I was 15. And that was an interesting relationship, too. Really nice person. But it was where I always felt a little less than, or I didn't deserve it, or why me? And some of that probably came from some of my upbringing. I did go away to college in Connecticut. I did not want to go. I had 4 choices, and I picked UConn because my parents got divorced right before I graduated. And the people pleaser in me, if you ever have felt like that, like you learned to be the people pleaser to avoid conflict, people pleasing is not about being kind, which took me years to understand. I had to do a lot of work and really did a lot of work in my certifications to help people understand it. It's really doing things to get approval, to be liked, and to avoid conflict. So I chose it because it was in-state tuition. And college was a really bumpy ride. My first year was terrible. I didn't feel good about myself. I was kind of depressed. I didn't do well at all. I ended up moving, and my mom and dad had split up. So my mom moved again to Syracuse. My dad stayed in Fairfield. But I never had a home to go to, like the home that I had gone to high school in. High school was the longest I had ever stayed in a house, had ever lived in one place. So that was really interesting also. So when I moved with my mom, I had to go back home to Syracuse, go to community college, got my grades up because they were dismal. I got my grades up, did amazing. I had gained a lot of weight in my freshman year of college. And I won't go into the details, but I will tell you that there are things that will shape you for a long time if you can't learn to process and let go of them. I gained weight because, again, I was soothing with food. A lot of people think that freshman 15 comes from just having freedom with food, lots of carbs, dorm food, but it also comes from the fact that you're sending an 18-year-old off to live on their own for the first time. I was very sheltered before that, and having to make a lot of decisions, not feeling good, family things had been going on, and food was the easiest way for me to cope. I did get into the beer a lot. There's no doubt about that, but I think food was the big factor. And my body definitely changed. So, two things happened in that I want to share with you. This is really important. So, when we cope with food, that's one thing. But when we are told something about our bodies, that's another thing. So, in addition to me coping with food, not understanding that that is the reason why I gained weight, I had dated someone there, and that person said to their friends, and it got back to me, my old girlfriend had a much better body than Kim. And of course she did, because she lived at home. She didn't live on campus. She had a little bit more stable environment, probably. I was drinking, I was eating, and I was dealing with a lot of mental health stuff in that first year, not doing really well at all, not connecting with people like I would have liked to. And, I go from this connection and my best friend and other best friends in high school to a place where I really don't know anybody, and I did not click in with anybody that I felt like I could confide in when I was doing poorly. I was hiding it again. But that's part of that people pleasing. That's part of growing up feeling like you have to be perfect. Have you ever felt that way where the expectations are high and you don't feel like you can share what's really going on, that you might look weak? And I think I was taught that. I think I was kind of taught, hey, your feelings, that's just, you're just having a bad day. You'll get over it. And I don't think it was the suck it up buttercup attitude, but I do believe that some of my feelings might have been a little invalidated, and no fault to anyone. It's just how things were and maybe how they grew up. But I don't think that I could come clean on how poorly I really was doing. I did end up going to Old Dominion University, and I worked there, still not super, super connected, but I did well, graduated. I had worked the whole time, moved to Northern Virginia. And one of the things that I did find is when I moved home and I also was at Old Dominion, I was much more active. I found myself eating better. I found myself understanding a little bit more of what was happening with the food, but I still snuck off and got food sometimes that I really wanted. And that was what made me feel good in the moment. So I'm going to tell you this one story of the college years. I remember sitting on my couch by myself watching TV, and I had a bag of chips. And which is ironic because I'm not a chips salty person. I normally would go for chocolate, but this happened to be chips that day. And I was watching TV, and all of a sudden I looked in the bag, and over half of the chips were gone. Big bag, whatever they were. And I was so embarrassed in front of myself. I was embarrassed. I rolled up the bag and I put it in the garbage. And the reason why that particular time it's really important to tell you that I did that is because that was the time where I came in contact with a lot of girls that had started dieting. Aerobics was big. They were having aerobics classes, and students were teaching them, and they were talking about dieting and not eating and calories. And I was just learning all of that all of a sudden. And it was in my mind, and it made me feel very shameful that these other girls were getting up in their little leotards and their leg warmers and doing aerobics and, not eating a lot of food. We didn't understand the quality of food versus the quantity of food at that time. So diet culture, it hooked into me, and it hooked into me hard. And then the sad part is I got even more shameful because later I took that bag off the top of the garbage and I opened it up again and had more. And then I doubled down on my shame and guilt. So if you've ever felt that way, I want you to really look back at your history and understand some of these came to you because of the way your brain had been wired, during your lifetime. It's not because you have no willpower. It's not because you don't have discipline. It's because you have some wiring. And food all along has played a part in taking care of myself. It's not really self-care when you're not doing the digging work and you're not understanding it. I did not like one of those chips. I did not love them. I didn't enjoy them. They literally were just going in my mouth and down. And the problem with processed food too is you don't get anything for it. You get a temporary high from it, but you're not getting any nutritional value. You're not staying full, so it's really easy to just keep eating. So there was a little bit of, I think, some depression going on too in college. But one of the greatest things that happened to me was when I graduated and I moved to Northern Virginia, I got a job with Mobil Oil. It's now ExxonMobil. And I started at the bottom. I was typing franchise agreements. I was doing budgets. I was even a department secretary for a while. But I got my foot in the door and I met some people my age and we had a really good time. And I felt like an adult. I felt like I was paying my rent. I was working. I was getting out and walking. My new roommates and I, we would do things like ski trips. We did things together, and I was feeling like an adult, and my self-esteem was starting to pick up. But I still had that underlying food situation. But I started running, and this is where things got really sticky. When I started running during that time, I had to go out by myself because when you have the personality that I had growing up, you also are very embarrassed to try new things in front of people. So I ran a 5K race and felt like I was going to die and I couldn't keep up with people. And this goes all the way back to my dad, by the way. So make those connections from your childhood. My dad and I would want to go run with him, but remember, my dad was a Marine. He could run 6 miles in his sleep. So when I would try to go with him, I felt like such a failure, just like dieting does to you. I felt like such a failure because I'd be huffing and puffing and he'd take off and I'd be running with him. And there's no way my dad could have slowed down at my pace. But I didn't understand heart rate back then and where I should have been starting off to run. And I would be in tears as he was like, I'll go around the block and come pick you up again. And he tried to be really kind about it. And I didn't want to ruin his run, but I felt like I was ruining his run and I was a failure at it. So it was interesting because when I was off on my own and I actually thought, you know what would happen if I did this for myself? What if I took my time and I learned to run just at my own pace? And I would only run in the morning when you couldn't see me and in the evening, because one time I ran in college and somebody yelled out, "You're not running right. You need to get on your toes." And it's so funny how when you're young enough, certain things that are told to you, you react to. Like, again, you're bad. You're stupid. You're dumb. What are you doing? Don't try that again. And so I decided just to do it quietly by myself and pretty much in the dark. I ran this loop around my apartment and it was a 1 mile loop and it was amazing. It did not take long. What I know about running now is interesting. It still saved me. I never would change anything about it because running became something that I really enjoyed mental health wise. It was great. And I eventually got married. I had 2 kids, and when I got divorced, in the early 2000s, running and joining a running group saved me. That was my social life. It was a very healthy social life. And it was like therapy. I'd run with my girlfriends on the road. These women became my greatest friends, and a couple of them were still in touch. I've done marathons with a couple of them, and we've just spent so much time on the road together. But guess what? All that running also became disordered because I had to do everything perfectly. I had to keep doing it. A 5K turned into a 10K, turned into a half marathon, turned into marathoning. And 23 marathons later, I just, I couldn't go out and do just a run for fun. I couldn't run 2.98 miles. I had to run 3 miles. I couldn't run 2.56 miles. I had to round it up and keep going. The perfectionism in me just floods into every part of my life. And I'm glossing over the marriage and the divorce a little bit because any of you who have been divorced, you know just the pain, how it shocks your self esteem, all the things that you wish you had done, all the things that you wish were going a different way. I don't need to tell you. If you have not been in that position, but you've been married a long time, you know how hard marriage can be. And working through that in communication is challenging. And I truly believe, even though I think it takes two people to get out of a marriage, I truly believe all the things that primed me throughout my life, the people pleasing, the identity issues, the moments of anxiety and depression, I think all of that contributed to any part that I had in that marriage failing. So I take full accountability for my side of everything because I know that I could not have been the best person that I could be because I didn't even know that some of these things were part of my makeup. I had no idea. And the controlling part, if you are struggling with food, you might also be someone who tries to control everything. And it makes sense because when you're trying to control everything, it's because you've had chaos. There's something that you're trying to be prepared for. There's something you're trying to lock down for safety, for belonging, to soothe anxiety. Control, we think of it as such a bad thing, but when you recognize that you're controlling and you're trying to control people and you're trying to control outcomes, then you realize, oh, this didn't come from me being a laid back, cool person where I was fully accepted. This controlling comes from other things, and you can give yourself some more grace. It comes from your background. So I'm telling you a lot of these personal details because if anything resonates with you, then you're going to make the connection to the emotional eating and you're going to learn to stop because that is the only way that we can do it. We have to rewire the brain. No more diets. The diets are not working. And I used dieting for a long time, controlling my food because I couldn't control a lot of other things in my life. And there were times when I would diet, but then I would turn around and I would binge eat terribly because that cycle, you just can only do it so long. You feel like a failure. And not only are you hungry and you're ready to give in, but you also just feel like a failure. So that's another way to soothe that awful feeling of not doing it right is to just eat food that makes you feel good. And of course, we know that when we're eating emotionally, a lot of times it's sugar, salt, fat, crunchy, gooey, something that's going to make us feel good. So what I'd love to do now is just also share with you that I had a super wake up call. And menopause was a really big wake up call for me because that was the most out of control I have felt with my body. I've been out of control with my mind, my mental health, how I wish I was. I actually, when we got divorced, I became a math teacher before I went into the nutritional health coaching. That was great because math, that just makes me happy. It makes me happy to help kids. I didn't go back to corporate. I had the schedule with my kids. But in the end, doing this and helping women and getting into nutrition, you can see my evolution of why I would end up here. But it's just coaching again. It's just helping someone again. It's just helping someone else. Menopause made emotional eating so challenging, though. I think probably around 2012, I was really navigating perimenopause. I also got remarried to Mike, my amazing husband, and I was blending a family. And oh my gosh, everything was, unicorns, roses, rainbows, all of it, until all of that started hitting. And the same issues were coming up, and I had not resolved the Kim issues. The controlling, I had not resolved issues of my own identity, standing up for myself, the people pleasing. And I'm just being really honest with you because if you don't resolve those things, they just keep cropping up. It doesn't matter what new place or new person you're with. If you're not solving your own issues, the food's never going to change. Alcohol's never going to change. It's all only going to get worse. And so luckily I had a lot of good training, and I happen to own a practice now with 2 therapists. So I get a lot of really great information and help to understand so much of this perfectionism, looking for external validation, people pleasing, trying to control everything. I'm really understanding that now. And that's what I work with on my clients. Clients will come in for a consultation and they're there to, what does everybody want to do right now? Everybody wants to lose weight. I get that. We don't feel good. We think that's going to make us feel better if we lose the weight. And so technically, yes, health-wise it might. But is it ever going to really solve all the problems to give you the most peace and joy in your life? Weight is the byproduct. So when clients come in and they have a consultation, they're shocked to know when we start really digging in and talking about it that the weight gain is not because they ate too much. The weight gain is not because it's too many calories. The weight gain is not because they have no willpower. The weight gain is not because they couldn't stick to the diet. All of that happens because there's a piece before that we've never resolved. And so if you can solve the piece before that, and we can we can react to triggers, but then we can rewire them right away. All these triggers from our childhood, all these triggers from feeling less than before, all these triggers of feeling like we have to take care of everybody and everything right now, all of those triggers, you're going to have them. It's going to happen for the rest of your life. However, you now are going to learn tools to rewire it right away so you're not carrying those negative thoughts and then going straight to the food to solve that horrible feeling. So when I went back to nutritional health coaching school, I got the basics on coaching, helping people open up and understanding what they're going through has a lot to do with what's going on with their health and their food, their habits. And changing habits has to happen after we understand why they can't change the habits. And it's a lot of times because of a thought process on being perfect or trying to have consistency or feeling bad about themselves all the time or not feeling like they're getting enough done in their habits. But what really switched the gears for me are two other things. I went to food addiction school, Dr. Bunmy, and she had a course that opened my eyes to not only the fact that we have a lot of things going on in our past and how we react to them now, but also the situations we put ourselves in with food. And knowing the type of person we are, if you're like me and you know you're an emotional eater, I know I will be an emotional eater for the rest of my life. Food has always been how I've coped, and wine a little bit. We'll talk about that in a moment. But if you know that, you can actually set yourself up for success, not just with your mind, but with the environments that you put yourself in with food, how you look at food. And I'm going to give you those 6 tips very soon. We're getting to those. So definitely a wake-up call. In 2021, I really started looking at alcohol again. I had done dry January. I'd done sober October. I'd taken time off, but I never really got serious about it because my relationship with alcohol was just like my relationship with food. I was using it to soothe. I knew that I really had to take a look at this because there were times I'd be driving home from work and I would be driving by the grocery store thinking, oh, this is your last opportunity to get wine if you want it tonight. And that freaked me out a little bit. I'm going to be honest. The fact that I was becoming dependent on a stress relief technique, even though I'm teaching other people what to do, I knew that having a glass of wine immediately would bring me down at night. So in January of 2022, I was visiting my mom and my stepdad in North Carolina. And my stepdad and I my mom had quit alcohol long before. And my stepdad and I would just have a glass of wine. And what I did was, for the first time in a very long time, because I eat my food too fast, I drink my wine too fast, like all of it, I just sat with him and I had a sip at a time. I put the glass down. I listened to the conversation. I got present. And that changed a lot. Not just with the alcohol, but what I'm teaching people with food to get really present, I did it with the alcohol. And I had to really think, what am I really getting out of this? And when I was with my stepdad, I only had one glass. I didn't have two. And this is the same with food and how we eat. When we really get present, we don't need as much as we think we do. But there's a lot of things in the back of our head that are going, we're not paying attention. Or with food, we're thinking clean plate club, for example. Or we're just plowing through it before it gets cold. Or we're just distracted and we're watching TV. So it's all linked up together. So I decided to quit drinking. I thought it was just going to be a break. But a lot of things that have helped me in my life are the things that I am not relying on to bring down my anxiety. So, and I say my anxiety, I've never been diagnosed, but I have anxious thoughts just like a lot of people do. I was always very nervous growing up. I don't have those same feelings, but you have to do a lot of work on yourself, your identity. So, relationship with food is so related to relationship with self. Let me say that again. Your relationship with food is actually related to your relationship with yourself. So I gave you all those details just for you to understand I'm piecing together why I am who I am and why I react the way I do. And I'd love for you to do that, not in a shaming way. Don't feel embarrassed about anything that's happened in your life. You cannot change the past, and it was set out for you to learn some lessons. Really dig deep into what lessons have you learned and what can you do differently? How can you react and think differently about different situations? Let's get to it. Let's get to the tips. So that was a very long history, and if you had anything in there that you resonated with, reach out to me. Send me an email, send me a DM on social media. I love to hear from you. We are in this together. If you have a friend that you talk about all of this to, please send this episode and you guys can talk about it. We have to let things out in order to really be able to process them, make changes, and rewire. And that's when my clients come to me. We really get all of this out on the table. So when we set our goals, we can say, okay, number one, this is the first step, is to knowing what's going on. So here it is. Here's your first step. Your first step is awareness. Everything that I just told you, that I am now aware of all the things that I've gone through and why I act the way I do, even the things I really don't like about myself, I understand it now. And I understand why food has become such a friend to me. I am so aware of why food makes me feel good, and it helps me check out from some of these really ugly things. But they're only ugly if I don't look at my evolution and how much I've learned and changed and have started to understand how I have to take care of myself before I take care of others. And I have awareness that food, if you can understand that food has become your friend to help you and is always there for you, then we can find other ways to help you soothe yourself without just using food. Now, food is enjoyable. Being aware that you can love food too, but it's learning to be in the present moment. And that's part of your awareness too. Why am I eating this? And I'll tell you, every time that Mike is out of town, this is a great example of awareness. He's out of town. I am very aware that I am a big secret eater. And I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be picked at. I want to be able to pick something out of the pantry without somebody looking at me or saying, oh, you're going to have that. Mike does not do that to me, by the way. But I've had that happen in the past. So, and I'm my own worst critic. So I have to be very aware when he's out of town. Hey, I don't need food to soothe. I get to relax. I get to have a reward just by sitting here. Many of you have heard me talk about Organifi gold chocolate. And that is one of my favorite things. It's like healthy hot chocolate. It's got reishi, mushrooms in it, lemon balm extract, turmeric, ginger. But it tastes to me like healthy hot chocolate, and it's warm and soothing. That's what I have now. Instead of looking through, and you know what? If I don't have sugar, I have the awareness that I will eat anything that has sugar in it because I'm soothing. Granola, my stepson's cereal, things that I would never eat that don't even taste good, that are filled with all these ingredients. So I found a way to have something that I can sip on slowly. It's comforting. It makes me slow down and think, really, what is it that I really need? Well, you know what? I need some rest. We're getting close to sleepy time. I need to watch my show. I need to veg out. I need to, pick up some knitting. The last thing I need to do is pick up my phone when I'm having emotional eating issues. So think about that too. But awareness, when you become aware of your triggers, like the secret eating, or stressful days, or going through perimenopause, or being alone. I work with widows, and it is one of the number one things with grief and being alone. Emotional eating happens quite a bit, and it's so understandable. And it's just understanding what's going on, awareness. And you know what awareness? It's just awareness. You don't have to take any action. You just, what is going on? The second thing is to remember that you do have permission to eat. So after you have awareness, remember, I have permission to eat that. If I want to eat that granola, I want to eat that cereal, I want to eat some crackers, I can do that. But I can also say no. I have that power too. I can eat it in 5 minutes. I can eat it right now. I can eat it in 30 minutes. When you tell yourself you cannot eat something, that is when you're saying to your 5-year-old brain, who's going to be naughty and say, oh, you tell me I can't have that? I'm going to want it even more. Someone tells me I can't have chocolate and it's sitting in the house. I want it 10 times more and I want it now. And I can't stop thinking about it. Give yourself permission to eat, because dieting and restriction has made your mind say this food's bad, this food is good, you can't, you can't, you can't. And then we want it even more. Instead of looking at that food and saying, I can eat you right now if I want to. And then that slows you down again, gives you a chance to take a deep breath, and it gives you a moment to take something out, take a size that won't be you eating out of the box and eating way more. It's you have permission to eat it at any time. So awareness, permission to eat. Number 3, I think, is absolutely important. This is physiological. It's not just the rewiring of the brain, but I think it helps your brain consciously nourishing your body. So remember, these are things that I have done to get myself out of this emotional eating. Remember what I said at the beginning of the podcast? People would say things like, oh, you're thin. Why would you need to do this? People don't understand that everyone has something that they rely on to soothe themselves. So when someone would say to me, hey, you don't look like you have an emotional eating problem. How are you helping people? I love the fact that not only do I have training and coaching, and I have EFT tapping coaching to help with that also, I love the fact that I've been through it. Do I love that I've had to struggle with it and that I still sometimes struggle? No, don't love that. But I love that I can help you because I know what you're going through. I've been feeling it. I've been doing it. I've had the shame. I've had the guilt. But what I learned is when I understood my triggers, like the secret eating, I understood that I could eat any food, anytime. I don't tell my brain no, but then I do say, I need to feed myself consciously throughout the day with food that is going to nourish my body, help my brain, help all of my systems, because when the systems are down, you are going to automatically turn to food. So 4 times a day, I make sure I have a plate, and this is Kim. This is what I do. A plate that has protein, lots of fiber. If I can, I get some healthy fats, and I can have some carbs in there. But I always start with the protein and the fiber because I know for me, protein will keep me full for a few hours. I know I need the fiber. There's so many reasons to have the antioxidants, the colon cleaning, like all the wonderful things. But I'll be honest with you, the combination keeps my blood sugar stable too. Because when we're up and down in blood sugar, that's a whole nother situation. That's another physiological situation. But me, I know that when my blood sugar's all over the place, I will reach for the sugar. So when I do that 4 times a day, my body every few hours is being it's getting a little re-up. It's getting a little renewal of something that I know that I need. I also am not getting hungry. Getting hungry where I'm like, oh, it's time for another meal. A few hours out from the last one, but I'm not getting so hungry that I'm just going to tear through the pantry and get anything that I can or go stop at the gas station and grab anything. Because when my mind isn't really working, I turn to that comfort food again. And it's normal. None of this is abnormal, by the way. It makes sense why we do it. And if you are tired at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, consciously nourishing yourself with a mini meal instead of caffeine and a cookie, you're going to feel a lot better. But again, you have permission to eat that cookie. But if you have something before it that's going to help stabilize your blood sugar, like the protein, life is going to be so much better and you won't just keep continuing down that track. Plus, it slows you down because if you do decide to have a cookie after any of your meals, you've already had a good meal that slows you down to think about it and you get to enjoy the cookie. So it sounds counterintuitive because you think, oh, I want to lose weight. Why would I even have a cookie? But if you have one cookie after you've had a very stable meal, maybe you won't have 10 if you only start off with a cookie. So those are things to think about, but I give a lot of different ideas to my clients on how they can structure we do whatever works for you, how you can structure your day, and you can pick the food that you want and have what you want as long as we are taking care of the body and you are being aware of what you're reaching for when, because 3, 4 o'clock is really hard for me. Getting to dinner is really challenging. Some people try to make it from lunch to dinner. That is a long time. That's usually 6 or 7 hours. So it makes sense that you need something in between. So those are the first 3: awareness, permission to eat, consciously nourishing. These are things that have really helped me and I teach my clients. The biggest thing that I think makes a difference outside of that is reducing your stress, reducing the anxious thoughts, reducing the limiting beliefs, and understanding who you are today versus who you were before. So I do that with tapping. For those of you who are on the video, tapping, you can see me tapping on my face. When we tap on these meridians and do its emotional freedom technique, we say a script with it and we can talk through a stressful situation we might be going through, a feeling we might be having, an emotion that we're going through. And it really helps relieve that and bring us back through that and through breath. Because when we are not connected to our bodies, that's what emotional eating is. We're disconnected. We're just eating to soothe. Anything will do. Anything is going to make us feel better. And when we are connected to our bodies, we are more likely to nourish and really take care of ourselves. So I do tapping. I had a really great episode with the Functional Moms podcast I've mentioned a couple times about journaling. Some people are not journalers. So what I've suggested is writing down just words, emotions that you might be feeling at this time, like stress. I'm stressed. If that's all you can get out, just write it down. Write it 10 times. Stressed, stressed, stressed. And we go through this with tapping. We use that word over and over again. We name it. And then we also say, well, where are you feeling it in your body? And write that down. Find out where that is on a scale of 1 to 10. How much are you feeling this? And when we use these other techniques, whether it's breathing or tapping, we can kind of figure out if we're actually shifting out of that. I find that journaling sometimes helps me when I write it out. I look at it and it kind of is not true. And I don't realize it's not true until I write it out. Same thing with tapping. I realize what the truth of the matter is, and I might be blowing something up, or I might be reading into something, or I might be reading into a situation the way I would 20 years ago. We're not the same now as we were 20 years ago, and how great is that if we go back to that step of awareness? But I do that. I do mindfulness practices like breathing, journaling, and tapping. I'm going to be honest with you. I believe that really honing in on these emotional strategies to bring my emotions back in check and to understand them and to be able to process them, I really believe that also helped me with my sober journey. I also believe it helps me with people around me, my husband, my kids. A lot of the things that I'm working on and my clients are working on, they even say, I speak differently to the people in my life. I'm less controlling. I don't have to manipulate and control everything. And that's really important because the more we hang on and try to control, the further away someone will go. So the techniques you're using to take care of you and to let go of some of the control that you're trying to have, control over food, your body, dieting, you will sometimes be like that with other people, right? So if that's the case, when you start to be more comfortable with yourself, you will be able to do that with other people. So that's when we're talking about stress. And I integrate these into my programs with my clients because I feel like I'm not trying to just help you get the body you want, lose weight, stop emotional eating. Stopping emotional eating is a goal. That's like a big goal. But I want you to have joy in your life. I want everything to be humming and ticking and be joyful. So true self-care, when I talk about that, that means setting boundaries, saying no, finding out who you really are and what you want. I don't like to go out at night during the week. Everybody around me knows it. And I've brought it up before in this podcast, so now you know it. I have to know myself. And when people ask me to do things, it has to be something I really want to do. When I first started being a coach and I wanted to get out and meet everybody and network and do all these things and have coffees and let everybody in the world know what I was doing, it was fun. But now that I'm busy and trying to squeeze things in, I have to be really careful with my time. And so saying no to things that I'm not sure that I should do, it's very important because I want to fit in the people who really light me up. First, my clients, my friends. I want to be able to have time for my family on the weekends. I want to be able to travel more now because I have 2 kids living out in Colorado. There are so many things that I have to say no to so that I can preserve my time. But also, this is why you say no and have boundaries. You have only so much energy to give in the world. And if you're not taking care of yourself first, and by the way, having boundaries also means having a good morning routine, a good nighttime routine, and we work on that a lot in the sessions. But remember that true self-care is helping you create the identity you want, but also really pulling out the best of who you really are. Because we are not our best when we're stressed out and we're resentful and we're controlling. So self-care is really important. And that embodies not just boundaries and things like that. Like, what about your hobbies? What did you give up to do, for somebody else? So I'm bringing back a lot of things into my life that I can bring in because now I have the time and hobbies. And I've told a lot of people this recently, but I'm so excited. I'm on a 165-day streak as of today. Duolingo learning Spanish. I wanted to learn Spanish. I took it when I was younger, but I never used it. So I wanted to learn Spanish. So that's fun for me. And that is self-care. That's something I can do rather than picking up the bag of chips. There are other things, the walking, the running. But when I talk about some of these things that give you joy, I'm also talking about things that you could get lost in. Not scrolling on Instagram, but you could get lost in as in a hobby or something that you've done in the past. One of my clients wants to get back to cross stitching. I'm so excited for her to do that. One of my former clients talked about getting back into painting. I have clients who just want to get out and hike. They love being outside, gardening. Whatever your passion is, it's not dorky. People always say, oh, but it's so dorky. Who cares? It's your passion. It makes you happy. I actually think I want to learn to knit again this year. And I used to think, oh, that's an old lady thing. Well, you know what? So what? I see actually, I see actually these 20-year-olds online doing all these amazing homesteading things and knitting, the canning, and making sourdough. And that would be so much fun. I love that they're doing that, and they look like they're having so much fun. So the last thing that I want to bring in here of the tips is movement and connection. Moving your body every day is so important. And it's not just about, we know we have to create muscle. We know we have to build that muscle for longevity. We know it's balancing our blood sugar. We know there's so much more about muscle than we've ever known in the past as we're getting older. But building that muscle is also going to help you with the emotional eating. It's going to help you with your mental health. Movement helps you with your mental health. Walking, when you're moving forward and you're looking around and you're seeing outside and seeing nature in any way and you're hearing the birds, highly recommend trying to do a walk without your phone. I do both. I'll do a walk and listen to a podcast, and I'll do a walk without the phone when I'm just walking the dog and just looking around and listening. That is so great for your mental health. Again, this all relates back to the emotional eating and getting away from dieting and being able to keep your habits going. When you're doing small things like that, remember, there's no perfectionism here. You don't have to go out the first day for 30 minutes. If you're just starting, take 10 minutes and just walk, and 5 minutes out, 5 minutes back. What you do every day is what is important. What you're doing every day for yourself is important, not starting off. And this is why people go to the gym and they think they have to do an hour workout, and they're in there January, February, and then they're dying. They just can't fit it all in, and so they quit. And it's the whole resolution factor. We do that all the time, though. We could have a resolution factor in April trying to start something gung-ho on a diet. You eat one thing that's not on the diet and you give it up. Well, I'm just not meant to do this. I can't do this. I only made it 3 days. Well, you know what? You made it 3 days. So when you come back to it, maybe try not to be so strict and you'll make it 6 days. But these diets are designed for you to keep buying them and keep failing. So that movement and then connection is that sense of belonging. You know, I talked about something with you when I was being really honest about moving all the time, being the new kid, trying to make friends, feeling a sense of belonging and safety with certain people is really important. Find your tribe, find your people, have community in some way or form. That's really going to help. Because when we're isolated, we are more likely to do things like pick up the wine, pick up the food. Eating alone becomes very habitual too. And then there's nobody watching. So you're just doing whatever to feel better. It's not your fault. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just something you can be aware of. So those are the 6 things that I think are really important. And I would love for you to also think about you're rewiring your relationship with food. You're rewiring your brain. You're not dieting. You're not dieting. You're rewiring your brain. And I'd love for you to add one bonus to those tips. And that is to really work on giving yourself grace, because shame and guilt are going to be, they're the anchors to those limiting beliefs. Shame and guilt are an anchor pulling down those limiting beliefs so that you will always believe that you're not good enough, not worthy, and your self-esteem will be low, your confidence is low. And all of that relates to body image too. When you can create a life where you feel like you're yourself, your authentic self, and you can live your life without so much shame and guilt, I really think when you normalize that, you will stop caring so much around the food, the body image, the alcohol, whatever it is you're struggling with. That shame and that guilt hold you back from being super aware and digging deeper. That shame and guilt makes us not want to go in and say, okay, what's really happening here? And my lack of self-esteem, my lack of feeling like I was doing things right, my resentfulness when I said yes all the time led me to the food. I told you all those personal things to share with you that all of that led to me using food as my drug. My drug of choice, was food in order to cope. And everybody uses something different, but in this family, you're here because you're using food. Compassion and kindness to yourself. You would never say the things to yourself you would never say the things that you say to yourself to your best friend. You would never do that, or to another person. So stop saying them to yourself and give yourself those wins every day. Count those wins. So one of the things that I'd love for you to do, and this is your after listening to these tips and trying to follow the tips, I'd also love for you to write a letter to your younger self and say, this is what you really could have needed this. And I'm going to give it to you now. So, dear young Kim, I'm really sorry you felt out of place all the time. I'm really sorry you felt like you had to do everything right. I'm really sorry you had to have all the answers. Guess what? You don't need that now. You're okay just the way you are. And you don't need food. You don't need food to cope, but you do need to love yourself. Drop the shame, drop the guilt. That's a very shortened version of a letter that you could write to yourself. So reflect on that. And I'd love to share with you, if you're interested in looking at coaching with me, just reach out. I'd love to talk to you. We can do a free 30-minute call. Just talk about your situation, see where you are. There's no obligation to work with me, but you might learn something about yourself that will help you move forward. I am also starting up this year a wonderful community, membership style community, where you'll get a chance to meet with me and other women just like you every single week. And it is online, and there's a community aspect to it where you can be with other people who understand what you're going through, and you can share with each other. And I'm going to be giving information every week in this community and listening to you and us learning how to use tapping to release a lot of this tension, stress, shame, and guilt. And I would love to hear from you just about the podcast. Share this episode with someone who might be able to use it. Reach out. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for being here. Please download this episode. And I really wish for you to be able to use your past as your biggest weapon towards understanding what's happening so that you can stop emotional eating and really take care of yourself, your mind, and your body. So thank you for being here. Nourish your entire life and give yourself tons of grace today. Welcome to episode 91 of the Emotional Eats podcast. Can you believe it? We are getting closer and closer to 100 episodes. This episode, by the way, goes a little bit deep. I wanted to share with you not only 6 tips for you to stop emotional eating, but I wanted to share with you some deeper things that could be related to why you are using food to soothe. So in order to make that really relatable, I decided to share a lot of history with you. Things from my childhood, middle school, high school, and up until now in my 50s. And when you listen and you understand different things about belonging and safety and expectations and perfectionism, all the things that go into why we think the way we think about ourselves, I think you'll understand more about yourself also. You may not be able to relate directly to my upbringing, but it might help you figure out the things in your world that make you want to turn to something, food, scrolling, Netflix, in order to feel better, to numb out, to escape some feelings. So I wanted to get a little deep and share that with you. So please know that you are very special to me, because I share a lot more in this episode than I have in the past about my background and why I do what I do in helping women stop emotional eating. So please listen, download, and if it really resonates with you and you've been talking to girlfriends about any of this, please send this episode on. You might be helping someone else out. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for coming in, because you are really coming into my inner circle on this one. Enjoy the episode.